Sorry everybody, it's Xilicks here, and welcome back to some more Guild Wars 2. So this time, we have a new ranger build for DPS. My last DPS ranger build I put out probably, maybe close to a year now. And that build was very good. It's still good, but I feel there are better options for DPS ranger now, especially because the new patch that came out 2 days ago. There's been a lot of changes to Ranger, specifically DPS Ranger. A lot of DPS changes that allow you to do a lot more damage. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting off with the pets, I choose a wolf, and you'll see why I have the wolf. The wolf has a lot of knockdowns. It has one knockdown on its own. It's on a 40-second cooldown. It'll use this on its own. You don't command that skill. It has a cripple. Just the standard bite, and then it has the fear, which you can control. Then our next pet will be an owl, who has, it gives swiftness in combat, which is nice. It does a skill where it applies vulnerability and does a lot of damage. Its auto attack does a lot of damage. You mainly want to have your owl out for auto attacking just because of how much damage it does. And then we have a chill that we can activate that does a fair amount of damage, and it also chills, which is useful. So next up, looking at our gear, I am running Longbow, Axe Warhorn. A lot of people have been running Longbow Greatsword. I feel Axe Warhorn's better just because Axe Warhorn gives you a little bit more DPS because you get the Fury from Warhorn. You also get the Hunter's Call, which is a ridiculous amount of damage. And now, this was added in this patch. The auto attack will grant might, so you can grant yourself 3 stacks of might if you attack 3 targets with your axe. So that's very useful. As far as sigils go, I'm running Sigil of Force and Sigil of Fire on the Longbow, and then Sigil of Force and Sigil of Accuracy on Axe Warhorn. So whenever we have our Axe Warhorn, we have 65% chance to crit. Then with Fury we have 85, and then in Longbow we will have 78% chance to crit. I went with Ranger runes just because we were a little bit low on precision, and the 7% extra damage while we have an active companion. You can't go wrong there. Another option you can take is Strength runes if you do not want to take Ranger runes. You'll be losing precision here. You'll be gaining a lot of power. You'll be gaining 5% damage while you have might, and you get 45% might duration. So you'll pretty much always have might just because this build puts out a lot of might, and your duration on it will be very high. Berserker Amulet, this is kind of obvious to me. We're going with a DPS build. Berserker Amulet in PvP gives you vitality, so you aren't insanely squishy whenever using this. You still have a little bit of extra health, which is very useful. So Berserker Amulet, can't go wrong there. So looking at our traits, 66200, same as the last DPS build, just obviously the traits are a little bit different. So the first trait, Marksmanship, is Opening Strike. You cause vulnerability with your first strike 5 stacks. Then Signet Mastery, we're using 2 signets, so the reduced cooldown by 20% is almost necessary for this build. Pet gains Opening Strike, so your first attack will pretty much do 10 vulnerability whenever your pet hits and you hit. That's a pretty good way to start off a fight with 10% extra damage right at the start. Eagle Eye increases longbow and harpoon gun range. Obviously this applies to our longbow, and our damage is increased by 5%. So our auto attack on longbow and our other skills have a 1500 range. That is the longest range you can get in the game, I'm pretty sure. There may be another skill that has this much range. This is a ridiculous distance. I mean, I'll run away from this golem. I can still hit him from here. I can still hit him. I can still hit him. Up, and then that's the range. So this is how far away I can attack this golem from. Which is pretty crazy. And I'm just auto attacking him, and he's dying very quickly. But yeah, that's a very long distance. So not something you want to underestimate, along with the fact that it's giving us 5% extra damage, so that's cool. Opening strike, always critical hit. So our first attack is 100% guaranteed critical hit for us and for our pet. This applies to our pet's opening strike also. So good way to start off a fight, a lot of damage. Next up, read the wind. Longbow and harpoon gun projectile velocity is increased. So the reason why I initially used shortbow in my old DPS build was I felt the longbow was too slow, and you couldn't, like, the longbow had a lot of damage potential, it just was not fast enough to get that damage in, where shortbow, it didn't have that much damage potential, but you could get the damage in really fast along with applying condi pressure. The condis weren't doing a lot of damage, but it may have forced people to make some mistakes because you're applying a lot of conditions to them and they're trying to cure it, along with dealing with the amount of damage you're doing. This also, along with, increases the speed of the arrows, which was one of the problems that I had with longbow. It also increases the speed of the attack by 10%. So it'll make you attack just a little bit faster. It definitely makes a difference. So in skirmishing, first thing is tailwind, gain swiftness when swapping weapons in combat. Swapping weapons. I can't speak English today. But you're going to want to start a fight in your Axe Warhorn. You give yourself the Fury, you do your Hunter's Call, maybe auto attack once for a little bit of might, then switch. Skirmishing gives you a lot of benefits for weapon swaps, so we'll gain swiftness from weapon swapping, which is nice for 5 seconds. Critical hits grant might to your pet. We're going to be critting a lot. This has no cooldown on it, so every time we crit, we're giving might to our pet. This will make our pet do a lot of damage just because we're also gaining might to our pet from Rampages 1. Our next minor trait is gain fury when swapping weapons in combat. So now we'll gain 15 seconds of fury from Call of the Wild. We'll switch weapons. We're now up to 20 seconds of fury. Then we have another 20 seconds of fury from Rampages 1. So just within like a couple seconds, we just stacked 40 seconds of fury on ourselves. So we're pretty much going to have it during every fight constantly. Quick draw reduces recharge on shortbow and longbow skills by 20%. This is obvious. It takes a rapid fire skill from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. Barrage goes from, I don't know, like 30 to 24 or something like that. It's just a good trait to have, especially when using longbow, just because some of the cooldowns are a little bit long. So you want to decrease them as much as you can. Then Hunter's Tactics deal more damage while flanking. So whenever we're behind a target, we're going to be dealing, behind or on the side of, 10% extra damage. We're going to have 10 stacks of vulnerability guaranteed at the start of every fight, if they don't clear it, that is. So that's another 10% damage. That's 20% damage. Then we're getting 5% damage from Eagle Eye. We will be gaining 7% damage from our Ranger Rune, and 5% damage from our Force. I think that adds to somewhere near like 40% extra damage. I wasn't really paying much attention as I was saying all those numbers. We're also going to be gaining a lot of might through our skills. And if we use this, this will also give us 25% extra damage. So we can do upwards of like 60% damage on ourselves if we have a fair amount of might. Yeah, that's a lot of extra damage. You don't want to mess with that. And then Moment of Clarity, gain an attack of opportunity for you and your pet on interrupting a foe. This has a 5-second internal cooldown. Daze and stun durations that you inflict last longer. So our wolf that's going to be doing knockdowns and interrupts, and our interrupt on our longbow is going to be giving us 150% extra damage on our next attack. Along with all these other buffs, we're now hitting like 200% damage on that next attack, if we have optimal settings, that is. That's pretty crazy. And then Wilderness Survival, we have Natural Vigor, increases endurance regeneration by 25%. Nice to have. Dodge rolls are very useful, obviously. Then reduces recharge on survival skills. We're only using one survival skill this time, but I felt like, oh, never mind. For some reason I thought, yeah, only one. This will reduce the cooldown on it. It's a stun breaker, and it gives us quickness. You can't go wrong with Quickening Zephyr. It's one of my favorite skills that the Ranger has, and a reduced cooldown on it is very nice. So essentially, this is what our DPS rotation is going to be. We are going to activate Rampages 1, Now, this is for a very fast kill. You don't want to always blow all these skills at once. But for if you're in a 1v1 scenario, for your most DPS, Rampage is 1, Call of the Wild, Hunter's Call, 1 auto attack, activate your Signal of the Wild, then weapon swap, activate Quickening Zephyr, use point blank shot, and then rapid fire. Now, I know that's a lot, so we're going to be testing it on the quote-unquote indestructible golem who just keeps respawning. So yeah, let's start this up. This is going to be a lot of damage. You're going to want to send your pet in, 1 auto attack, activate your skills, use that rapid fire. It was an 11k rapid fire. And as you can see, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. You're going to switch to your wolf and go for another interrupt. And we pretty much destroyed that golem very quickly. This is one of the ones that as soon as it like loses all of its health, it gains it all back again. So with the rapid fire and then the other vulnerability that we get from opening strikes, we had 20 vulnerability, the attack of opportunity proc twice, the 25% damage from Signal of the Wild, the quickness, the might stacking we were getting from Rampage, and our auto attack, the Fury, obviously, for crit damage, our pet attacks, which are doing a lot of damage. It's just ridiculous damage right now. I don't know if ArenaNet is going to nerf this, but if you run around, you'll see that like almost every ranger is running Longbow and just crazy DPS builds. I'm going to quickly demonstrate the might stacking capability that you get from this. So as you can see, if we're in a group fight, we're pretty much, if there's at least 3 targets, we're going to maintain at 10 stacks of might. This will be even higher if you're using strength runes instead of ranger runes. I would not recommend strength runes personally, but if you strength runes, you will be doing more damage, but you'll be losing more crit chance, which I feel is more important. But yeah, a lot of damage coming from the longbow. It's very ridiculous. We do not have piercing arrows, so keep that in mind. You can only really hit 1 target. But this is essentially what your role is going to be in PvP. You're going to be standing in an area where the enemies can't get to you, like I'm doing right now, and just raining hell upon everyone. You can see the Sigil fire proc a couple times for a little bit of extra single target and AoE damage. Obviously our barrage will be doing a lot of damage to groups, and it's pretty much just pretty overpowered right now. You will die very quickly, so keep that in mind. You have very little survivability, so obviously Sign of Stone, this is like your GTFO button. If you're taking a lot of damage to activate this, you will take no damage for 6 seconds. Keep in mind you can still be knocked down, and conditions can still be applied to you. Also, remember, Quickening Zephyr is a stun breaker, Signal of the Wild gives you stability, and Rampage's 1 also gives you stability. I would recommend, though, not using Signal of the Wild at the beginning, just because it does give you a bit of health regeneration, and it can be used towards an end of a fight to get a little bit extra damage in at the end of the fight. So you do your burst at the beginning, and then they're getting low, you activate this for the extra 25% damage, and the movement speed increase is nice to have too. So yeah, that's pretty much the build in a nutshell. It's really just a lot of damage. There obviously are counters to it, like reflex and other things like that. Projectile destruction, obviously. I feel like a skilled meditation guardian would not have a problem against a ranger. These kind of rangers, at least. So just know your weaknesses, know you're not invincible with this build. You will be taking a lot of damage from pretty much anything. But just know that you're also going to be doing a lot of damage. And remember to use your pet skills, all the good stuff. I don't really have much else to talk about, because this build is pretty straightforward. Usually I have to do like some explanations. This build is pretty much just use your skills until they die. So yeah, thanks for watching. My name is Xilicks. See you guys next time. Okay, thanks, bye.